Good morning. This will be another short one. I'm recovering from my hospital stay. My neck, however, is still killing me, so I may have to knock this off early. And I'm sure those of you who are stuck watching this will be uh, for a class assignment or something. Will be glad to know that I may let you out of class early today. A couple of brief things. One has to do with the difference between Trump and Harris on the uh, Medicaid issue, and I have some firsthand uh, knowledge of that because I had to put my mother in a home. She had she was in her 90s. She was 90, and she developed dementia, and uh, so we she ended up going into a nursing home. She had to go to the hospital first, and then uh, because she fell down. And then when in recovery, they sent her to a nursing home to recover. And she was only allowed to be there a short period of time under Medicare and her own insurance. I think she had Blue Cross. And I was informed that she'd have to, that she could stay on under Medicaid. And because there was no way I couldn't take care of her, and she needed a place where she could be watched and taken care of, 24 hours. And so they said, but to qualify for Medicaid, she can't have any assets. That's what do you mean? She has to be no, she has to have no cash. She has to have no fungible assets, or we can't take her. And me, I'm going to have to pay an amount which would have dissipated whatever savings she had. And she only lived for a little more than a year after that. They would have been gone. And and then what would I have done? Then I would have no way to pay with her assets. I would have had to go into my assets, and we would have ended up both being broke had she lived long enough. So that's really bad. Now the way I finessed that situation was under Florida law, they can't seize. And remember that this is a state issue as well as a federal issue. They can't seize your homestead under any circumstances. That's why O.J. Simpson, after he had that judgment against him, moved to Florida, bought a house, said, "This is my homestead." They couldn't touch it. So I'm sitting there saying, well, the only thing I can do is the house needed a lot of work. So I basically took every penny she had in savings and I spent it on rehabilitating the house, getting it back in top condition in hopes that she would someday, I didn't really expect it, but hope that she could come back to it. And we, in fact, did bring her back a few times to visit with friends and have people over to the house. So she was allowed to leave, and she was thrilled when she saw the house. I had to basically tear it apart and rebuild it from the entire inside plus the outside windows and the roof. And it was basically we tore it down to a shell and then rebuilt everything. And it exhausted all of her savings plus a pretty good chunk out of my own. But then she was able to stay there, and we didn't have to pay anything because Medicaid picked it up at that stage. Well, what a horrible thing for many people. They have a choice between becoming destitute themselves uh, and to pay for a nursing home, or making sure that the person about whom they cared had zero assets of their own, or if they did have them, they were going to lose them. And that's just that's a horrible situation for people. And what Jack Kennedy did, and I remember when he introduced Medicare, is he said the real burden that he was trying to lift was the burden on uh, the adults who had parents who were elderly and sick and couldn't afford medical care. And that burden would fall on their children. And people were going bankrupt over this, not their medical bills, but their parents' medical bills. And just think about that. And I point this out to those of you who say the Democratic Party is it's changed. It's no longer the Democratic Party. It left me, like Reagan used to say. Well, it hasn't. And these issues that she's facing now, because what she's proposing is that the Medicaid be replaced by, in addition to the Medicare system, and that Medicare cover these people in this situation, so they don't have to go broke. And when Kennedy introduced Medicare, that was what he said. He said, "This is basically," I'm paraphrasing. I'm a lot more eloquent than he was, so it'll sound better coming from me. Uh, that uh, that Medicare was intended to keep children of senior citizens, adult children of senior citizens, from going bankrupt themselves, paying the medical expenses for their parents. And just think about this. Now we turn 65, we've got Medicare, and it covers most of our insurance. We may have to pay a little extra. I have gap insurance, a lot of people do. But compared to where it was before Kennedy, it was a horrendous situation. Kennedy was a Democrat, proposed Medicare. I don't know of a single Republican anywhere who is getting Medicare who wants to do away with it. Harris, what Kamala wants to do is do the same thing for senior citizens, home care, so that we can pay for people that can stay in their homes instead of having to stay in a rest home, and have somebody come in and take care of them, and the taxpayers pick up the cost of that. Or or you increase your Medicare premiums, or however it works. But to take care of those of the middle class people are the ones who really get the boot on these things, to help them out in a serious manner. So this is Harris today. Trump, absolutely not. Kennedy, Medicare. Republicans across the board, absolutely not. Let's go back to Roosevelt with Social Security. Okay? Think of how it was before Social Security. Old people were the largest class of poverty-stricken people in the country. People over 65, because they couldn't work anymore unless they were lawyers like me, and you work until you're dead. But the average person who works a job, they'd retire. Some of them had retirement income, many did not. And all of a sudden, you had all these senior citizens with no income, no way of earning it, and they were destitute. They were destitute. That situation before Social Security was horrific. People were dying of poverty. Old people. They couldn't get basic medical care. They couldn't, I was just in the hospital with this horrible surgery. Before Medicare, before Social Security, I would have been completely out of luck. Whatever savings I would have had would have been gone just from this operation. So Kennedy, the Democrats generally, since Roosevelt, have been mindful of looking out for the little guy. By little guy, I don't mean short, and I don't mean destitute. I'm talking about the middle class. And Roosevelt came in. Social Security was a huge relief. It took senior citizens out of being the poverty class to, in many cases, being the wealthiest people in the country. Fine, they deserve it. I deserve it. I will when I become a senior citizen. So that's Roosevelt did that, Kennedy did it, and now Kamala wants to do the same thing. It's all in the same tradition of the Democratic Party. And every time the Republicans are saying, well, how are we going to get the money to pay for this? Here's a suggestion. Do the math. Take a look at how much the Trump and the Bush Jr. and the Ronald Reagan tax cuts have cost the Treasury over the years. And I came across on the internet that somebody was trying to sell this. I think what the heck was the guy's name? Reagan's economic advisor, and he had the Lafler curve, and they're still trying to peddle that. The whole theory, if you remember the Lafler curve, was this guy Lafler. He was a laughing stock. It should have been his name, Laughing Stockler. His theory was, you slash taxes for a business, cut their taxes to the bone. They will take that savings that they paid and they will invest that in producing more products, hiring more people, producing more tax income, and the tax cuts rather than resulting in less revenue to the federal government, will result in more because there'll be more tax, because there will be more profits to be taxed. So even though they're going to be taxed at a lower rate, there'll be more to tax, and therefore more money comes in. What a great idea. Only one little problem with it. It never worked. Reagan put that Lafleur tax thing in there, that laughingstock tax, and you know what happened to the national debt? It trebled. 3 times the national debt by the time Reagan left office because of the Lafleur curve. Now, those of you who don't remember this basic history are doomed to repeat it, which is why George Bush Jr. got away with doing it with the same result, and Donald Trump did it with the same result. Every time these Republicans get in power, they slash taxes for the wealthy, they slash taxes for business, and they blow a hole in the national debt. And if they hadn't done that, then number one, we wouldn't be looking at anywhere close to the national debt. Bill Clinton had us on a glide path to get rid of that national debt in 10 years. It was something like $300 billion, and now it's in the trillions. It was from 300 billion, it was gone down for 2 straight years, and was well on its way. And then George Bush Jr. came in and took the savings that was supposed to go to pay down the debt, dissipated them to other people like his brother, the governor of Florida, for pet projects in Florida. And that was just, it eventually couldn't destroy our economy. But in the meantime, there would have been plenty of money to pay for what Kamala Harris wants to do. It would have been plenty of money. We would have been in a surplus situation instead of this massive debt. So every time I hear Republicans say, "Well, we can't afford that," it's like, yeah, we can't afford that because your party keeps starving the federal government of tax revenue, which the government could then use for these programs. So Harris is at least wants to go back to put in some of the taxes on, it's not going to disable or kill anybody, but to get back some of that revenue that they lost, and that extra revenue can be used to pay for a program like this. Plus, they're going to have some add-on to Social Security taxes and so on. That math can be worked out, but it's doable. But the main thing that's going to make it doable is reinstating some tax fairness on the people best able to afford it, and not just without destroying them. That's not going to happen. So that's just my word on that. So when you hear people say, "Oh, the Democratic Party is that," and they talk about political correctness and this, that, and the reality is the bottom basic line difference between the two parties is the Democrats are willing to spend money to help out the people who really need help and to enforce the antitrust laws, which is extremely important. Republicans always turn their back on the antitrust laws, and someday I'll tell you about my antitrust case I had in the United States Supreme Court, where I had to go head to head with the Bush Jr. Justice Department, and we cleaned their clock. But boy, did we have to fight them. And you people don't have any idea what goes on behind the scenes. You know, like the party, oh, that guy, he's a Republican. You have no idea that the Republican Party under George Bush Jr. was hell-bent on essentially destroying our antitrust laws, and without wanting to claim too much credit for myself, but objectively and literally, had I not won that case in the United States Supreme Court, our antitrust laws would be garbage today. So these are the things that go on behind the scenes. It's really, at the end of the day, it's about money, it's about taxes, and it's about government spending and how the government's going to be able to have the revenue to help the folks, as Bill O'Reilly would say. And the Republicans never want to help the folks. They want to cut taxes for the wealthy. That has not changed since President Taft came to office. It was ratcheted up with Harding and Coolidge and Herbert Hoover, and it was up to the Democrats to pull us out of that mess with Roosevelt. And then when Eisenhower was president, we ended up with two major recessions, and Kennedy had to pull us out of that one. It just goes on and on. And, in recent history, Barack Obama had to pull us out of the George Bush Jr. recession, and then Trump comes back, and then well, first of all, Clinton pulled us out of the Reagan Bush Sr. mess. Then along comes Bush Jr. and undoes all the good that Clinton did in that regard. And he gets himself into major trouble. The economy was a mess at the end of his administration. Barack Obama came in and pulled that one out of the fire. And then Trump comes in, slashes taxes, and undermines basically all the good that was accomplished by Barack Obama. And he said, "Oh, but it was COVID. If he hadn't done what he did, we would have had plenty of money to deal with COVID without having to go into debt. And it's that massive debt which is what drove inflation. So it's about economics. It's about the fundamentals. It's about taxing. It's about spending. It's about antitrust. It's about enforcing regulations. That's what it's really all about. And if you don't know that, then you're incredibly naive, as most people are, about the real reality of politics. Done with that subject. Second subject, I will make this one short. I was watching some of those people speaking at that Madison Square Garden hate fest, and I was, and I'm no prissy, and I'm no saint, and I've certainly used some salty language. I've peppered my sentences with salty language. Yeah, not bad for this early in the morning. Oh, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, okay, still not bad. So I, I was just almost glad my mother wasn't alive to see this. And I was watching some of these performers, not just the one who made that crack about Puerto Rico being a floating garbage patch in the ocean, an island of garbage, but the others. There was one guy up there who was, basically calling Kamala Harris every filthy name you could think of, including the C word. Just disgusting people, and one right after another. And I thought, can you imagine John Kennedy having an event, a campaign event, and having people like that at that campaign event? If any person had got up and said even a hint of the things those people said, Kennedy would have blown his, Kennedy had a temper. He would have pulled whoever was responsible out of that for that and thrown him right out on the curb. But this guy Trump brings in, he's low class. And those of you who think he's funny or go, well, he stands up to the man, which he doesn't, he is the man. But put all that aside. Put aside those of you who think he has great policies about immigration. He has no policies. I know it because I do immigration law, among other things. He has no policy to deal with the real problem, which is asylum seekers. He has no policy to deal with that. None of the Republicans do. They had a bill which did deal with the asylum, and Trump said, don't sign it, and the Republicans said, oh, okay, if you say so. So the bill didn't pass. If that bill had passed, we'd be well on our way to solving that problem, at least that portion of it, and that's a big portion of it. So it's just like, it just drives you crazy because he has no class, he has no programs, he has no policies, but mainly he's a low class person. And it's not snobbish to say we expect our presidents to be high class people. Yeah, Jefferson, Washington, Lincoln, Roosevelt, Kennedy, Truman, Barack Obama, high class people, well spoken, and he just hangs out with just thugs, tough guys standing up there. I'll call her the C word. Look how tough I am. It's just that's not the proper image for the United States of America. Man, if it is the image of the United States of America, we got problems. I hope to hell that Kamala doesn't just win, but she cleans this guy's clock. As I've said before, he's a danger to the Constitution. I don't want to go back into the Madison versus Marbury case, but he's a real threat to that. Separation of powers depends on the executive willingly going along with it. This character, who knows what he's liable to do, but mainly what bothers me most about him is he is so low class. And for that reason alone, please don't vote this guy into office. I'm begging you, please. Isn't there? I think there's a song like that. If there is, no, I'm not going to sing it. I was just trying to scare you. All right. I have work to do. I can't be wasting time with the likes of you. Bye.